Hi, I'm Steffany Strange. Want to hear something scary?
Nico, Lapita, it is the flayed Lord. Don Ronaldo, Nico's uncle and the leader of the archaeological expedition, exclaimed in wonder. The three of us looked at the small pedestal, regally holding the upright cross-legged corpse. A staff of rattles was held in its right hand, an aged feathery shield in its left, and a large golden gem glinted in its forehead. As we moved closer, I realized something else. The corpse was wearing somebody else's skin like a suit. From the corpse's wrists hung the hands from that skin. Dr. Ronaldo's voice vibrated with excitement and greed as he urgently told us of the great Aztec deity, Totec, worshipped for agriculture and war. How in this very room, people had been sacrificed in worship of the flayed Lord, killed, skinned, and had their organs removed in rituals, praying to him for a bountiful harvest. My best friend Nico and I gazed at the corpse uneasily, because despite its age, it still looked eerily lifelike. At first, volunteering for Nico's uncle for the summer had sounded like fun. We could have the chance to be real explorers like in the movies and television. In reality, the dig had been a lot of thankless work. Dr. Ronaldo was a yeller and relentless taskmaster. He would even steal things from historical sites and sell them. We moved further into the historic altar site I had found. I've always loved maps and math, and using a digital mapping program I'd made, I had discovered a secret room deep in the ruins we were excavating. Excited, I told Nico and his uncle about my discovery. Dr. Ronaldo had us come look for it late at night while the other archaeologists slept. Smiling widely, Dr. Ronaldo shook Nico's hand and congratulated him on finding the flayed Lord. Nico looked at me sheepishly. It was all Lapita, Tio. I just dug and lit the way. But his uncle barely registered what he said, already planning an international tour for the discovery. This was typical of him. He was constantly ignoring my achievements. Nico was my same age, but was treated with more respect. "Let's bring an artifact before I send my crew down," Ronaldo said, eyeing the glittering golden gem embedded in the head of the corpse. He rubbed his hands together in delight, telling us that it was the resurrection stone of lore, said to summon the flayed Lord into our world so he could feast on the sacrifices offered. He reached out to grab the gem, but his hand was too big to grip it properly, and he slipped, cutting himself on a rough edge of it instead. We all stared in silence as Ronaldo's blood was absorbed into the stone, and the golden gem began to glow. The earth started to shake. Shadows flickered around the statue, making it appear even more lifelike. In fact, it looked like it was waking up. Dr. Ronaldo barreled past us, making a break for the entryway. We ran after him, but the earthquake had knocked rocks loose, sealing off that exit. I grabbed Nico to run back to the altar. According to the maps I studied, another exit should be behind it. The exit should lead to a cavern with an underground river, a one-way connection to the local village. It was also said to be a river to the underworld. Nico smiled nervously. He was game if I was. Running back, that's when we saw it. The flayed Lord was no longer on its pedestal. "Where is it, Lapita? Did it fall behind the—" Nico was interrupted by a horrifying scream. In the darkness behind us, we heard a crunching and tearing. The scream cut off abruptly. We turned back to Ronaldo, or what was left of him, the skinless body of Nico's uncle, and crouched above him was the reanimated corpse, feasting on his entrails. We ran for it, but we were running from a dark god, and were quickly overtaken. Blocking our river exit was the flayed Lord, and he wore Don Ronaldo's freshly peeled face over his. Nico looked ready to charge, but a force stopped him. His left arm began to sear and pop blisters. "Totec, stop!" I said, standing up to the flayed Lord, and Nico's injuries halted. He collapsed on his knees. Suddenly, the flayed Lord was before me. He wasn't much taller than me. Blood dripped onto me from the skin flaps he wore. The golden gem burned bright on his forehead.
"No supplicant dares to speak to a god in such a way. You remind me of my Chukomakocho. Are you she? Return to me."
I remembered. That was the name for the goddess of nourishment, the goddess of plenty. Distracted, the reawakened corpse god pulled me even closer to him and breathed in.
This world doesn't seem so different. It smells rich with death. Wars that sway like swarms throughout the land. They too will sacrifice themselves to me. Anything to bring back the health and abundance they crave.
I knew what I had to do. Quickly, reaching up to the flayed lord's forehead, I twisted, ripping the golden gem out. The god recoiled, weakened, and suddenly corpse-like again. I pushed him into the river to be washed down into the waters of the underworld. Smiling and shocked that we had survived the flayed lord, Nico and I also dived into the deep river, knowing it was our only way out. Swimming out of the cavern towards the sunlight in the village. Along the way, I discovered that despite holding it tightly within my hand, somehow I had lost the golden gem. As we climbed out of the river onto the shore of the village, I didn't notice the soft golden glow radiating from within my chest. I only knew how happy I was to be safe, and also, as I eyed Nico, how incredibly hungry I was all of a sudden.
My great-grandfather lived until his 93rd year and was sharp even near the end. He lived with me, my parents, and my siblings in the same house that he grew up in. Once the sun was about to set, my parents brought in some of our animals and boarded the windows and doors. They did this every night, ever since I could remember. I decided to ask my great-grandfather about this, and he proceeded to tell me the following story. In the 1930s, my great-grandfather had just been released from prison for making moonshine, and he needed a job to support his family. Luckily, a mining company had recently moved to town and was looking for employees. The new company was a little controversial. Some people didn't think the mountain should be disturbed, but others believed that finding coal was necessary and profitable. The mining company was looking for young men for the blasting crew. The job was incredibly dangerous. The crew would drop black powder or dynamite into the seams of the mountain to create a hole. They would then investigate the holes to look for seams of coal so that the company would know where to open the mines. The risk was high, but so was the pay, so my great-grandfather happily accepted his job offer. On his first day, my great-grandfather followed the crew as they blasted a hole in the mountain. It created a small opening, so Jim, the smallest of the crew, was tasked with going inside. They tied the rope to his waist, and he slowly and carefully crawled into the hole. My great-grandfather was holding and feeding him the rope at the other end. Jim descended further and further into the mountain, far enough that they could no longer see his light from the surface. Then the rope stopped. Hey, I think I just heard something growl. That's not possible, right? That's just the mountain settling. You're fine, said Bert, one of the older members of the crew. Keep going. The rope began to move again, much slower this time. Oh my God, hold me up. It's gonna get me. Oh my God. You're fine, Jimmy. Wait, I think he's really in trouble, my great-grandfather said, and he began to pull the rope, but it was too heavy. Like something was pulling from the other end. Jim's screams continued to echo from inside the mountain. The other crew members grabbed onto the rope and began pulling until they were launched backwards onto the ground. The rope was no longer heavy. They quickly reeled the rope in. There was nothing on the other end, just fresh blood. Bert stuck his head into the hole. Oh God, smells like rotting meat. He called out below. Jim? Jim, are you okay? Answer us! A deep, bellowing growl responded. Then the sound of digging, growing louder and louder. Oh my God. Run! The crew began to run to the hill and make their way down to where they had parked their truck. Everyone except my great-grandfather. He just had to know what Bert saw. Just one look, one quick look. My great-grandfather said this was one of the biggest regrets in life. He saw something he could never unsee. Something that scared him so badly that he wet himself. Crawling out of this hole was something in the shape of a man, like a man that had been skinned and drenched in blood. It had massive horns on its head. He couldn't make anything out about its face except the slits for eyes and razor-sharp teeth where its mouth was supposed to be. It let out a hellish scream, and my great-grandfather booked it back to the truck just as the men were pulling away. He barely made it. They got back to the mining office, screaming incoherent things at their boss. Okay, everyone, calm down. Now tell me what happened. Where's Jim? In the mountain. Something took him. It looked like the devil himself. Their boss stared at them, thinking carefully about what to do next. Okay, let's go. Take me there. The rest of the crew protested and cried. We'll go back under one condition, my great-grandfather said. We have a group of at least 10 armed men with us. 2 hours later, my great-grandfather, his boss, and the armed men were making their way back up that mountain trail. After an hour or so, they came to the spot where the crew had parked their truck the first time. They got out and climbed the small hill. At the top, my great-grandfather stopped and pointed to the hole. But now, there was a blood trail leading out of it. All of the men followed the trail into the nearby trees. The trail turned into a set of footprints, huge prints that were a cross between a bear's and an eagle's. And the prints were headed down the mountain towards the town. The men ran back to their truck and rushed back to their homes to warn their families of the beast on the loose. Families were instructed to board their windows and bring their livestock indoors. After that day, no one stayed outside at night. It became part of the routine. Bring as many animals as you can inside, board your windows and doors, and pray the beast doesn't get you. So, it's still out there? I asked. My great-grandfather nodded.
We should have left that mountain alone. We unleashed something terrible into the world that day. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself.
It was Kai's first day driving for the rideshare app CarShare along the streets of New Delhi, India. He'd recently lost his job and needed to make money while looking for a new one. But he had driven around all day and had not received a single passenger. Tired of wasting his gas and his time, he was about to turn the app off when he finally got a notification. A woman named Sia was looking to be picked up in a sort of sketchy area of town. Kai really needed the money, so he accepted the ride and headed over. His GPS led him to a poorly lit, creepy block with nothing but abandoned warehouses. After looking around for a couple minutes, he finally saw a woman, but she was walking further and further away from the original pickup spot. She matched the picture on his app, and so he drove up to her and rolled his window down. "Are you Sia?" he asked. The woman stopped walking and looked at him. She was a bit shaken and confused, but she nodded. He gestured for her to come in, and she slowly opened the door and sat in the passenger seat. "How are you this evening?" Kai asked. Sia just continued to stare ahead of her. She was rubbing her neck nervously. Then she began patting down her body as though looking for something. After a couple more moments of silence, she finally spoke. "Shit, I think I lost my phone and my bag." She spoke slowly, slurring and stumbling on her words. She looked at Kai. I don't remember calling a car." "Oh, is that not you?" Kai pointed to the photo on his phone. "No, that's definitely me," Sia confirmed. I don't know where I am." "We're in the warehouse district," Kai replied. "What were you doing over there anyway?" I think I was taking a shortcut. Yeah, I think I was taking a shortcut home. I don't remember." Kai was beginning to get a little suspicious. He noticed that her eyes were bloodshot. Maybe she was really drunk. Kai was not looking forward to the possibility of her getting sick in his car. It was definitely not the way he wanted his first ride to go. He handed her a bottle of water. "Would you like some water?" Ah! Sia smacked the bottle out of his hand. Okay, Kai thought. There was definitely something wrong with this woman. I'm sorry, I have no idea why I did that. Sure, I'll take some water. Kai watched in the corner of his eye as she leaned over to grab the bottle from where it landed by her feet. And that's when he noticed them for the first time. Her feet. They pointed backwards. He almost lost control of the car when he saw them. That's when he knew. The woman sitting next to him was a bhoot. In India, a bhoot is the spirit of a recently deceased person. Their feet are pointed backwards and always hover above the ground because the earth is too sacred for them to touch. They are also terrified of water. This woman must have died very recently, thought Kai, because she still didn't seem to understand that she was dead. He felt sorry for her, but immediately snapped out of it. He knew that he had to get her out of his car before she realized she was dead. With his right hand still on the wheel, Kai slowly reached over to his door compartment. He carefully unscrewed the top of another bottle of water, slowly, so Sia would not notice. As he did this, Sia continued to rub her neck. She pulled down the visor, brushed aside her thick black hair, and examined her neck in the mirror and screamed. Kai looked over and saw that her neck was completely purple and bruised with a red ring caused from friction. He could see the look of realization wash over Sia's face. Her once timid expression morphed into that of pure, unfiltered fury. She turned her now pitch-black eyes toward Kai, just as he sprayed her with the open bottle of water. She yelled in agony as the water burned her skin, and in a few moments, she was gone. Not realizing he had been holding his breath, Kai let out a sigh of relief. His heart was still pounding out of his chest. "I'm never driving for car share again," he thought to himself. His hands were shaking, and when he heard the steady drumming of the rumble strip, he realized he was drifting into the shoulder and jerked the car back into his lane. "Pay attention," he thought. His eyes darted around the car nervously, and when he was certain that he was completely alone, he began to punch in the directions to head home. Kai was suddenly blinded when some jackass began tailgating him with his brights all the way on. Kai began to speed up to get some distance from the car behind him when he realized he had knocked his rear view mirror out of line when he sprayed the bhoot. He adjusted the mirror back into place and saw two pitch-black eyes staring back at him. The driver, who had been tailgating him, later reported to authorities that something lunged at Kai before he fishtailed off the road and slammed into a post. There was only one body in the mangled wreck. The next morning, a few miles away, Sia's body was found in the warehouse district. So they say, beware of who you let into your car late at night. They just might be a bhoot.
Thanks so much for listening. Like and share if this video gave you the chills. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell for notifications. See you next time.